When you want to change a certain habit, science says it takes at least 21 days, right? For the brain to start growing, new neurons that are reprogramming. But if you don't have the right environment, that's going to be very, very challenging. We all go through internal battle on a daily basis, and in sports we can, of course, admire the features of an athlete and the skills and the talent and the abilities, but at the same time we also identify ourselves with those athletes.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like, wow, this game or a match, it's in a way a condensed daily life or a condensed life into an hour or 2 or 3, where you start at the beginning, you're even, then you end up winning or losing, but in the process or journey of the match and the game, you're going through ups and downs. You're going through that battle of trying to win that inner battle where you go through your doubts, your worries, your fears. So all of these elements are part of everyday life of everyday person. When you want to change a certain habit, science says it takes at least 21 days, right? For the brain to start growing, new neurons that are reprogramming. But if you don't have the right environment, that's going to be very, very challenging. The environment is the one that can be very stimulative to you. It can be really supportive, or it can be pulling you down. So it's super important, even though we always encourage ourselves to be independent in terms of what we do, what we eat, how we sleep, how we lead our lives and what we do and how we can live the best version of our lives possible. But at the same time, we're social beings. Mm-hmm. We are very tribal beings. And even if it's the smallest community, we still want to belong to that community. But it's super important in the end of the day, because, making tough choices, these are tough choices, because society, when you go out there, super majority of the places where you go to eat or people that you see, it's a kind of a vicious cycle, and they lead their life in a certain way that maybe doesn't coincide or correspond to your choices that you want to make, the new choices or maybe the new changes. So it's really hard. I feel like it's reinventing yourself constantly. For me, I've had this kind of upbringing, had the great foundation, and, I've achieved incredible things. I was dreaming of becoming number 1 in the world and becoming a Wimbledon champion. And that was my dream. I achieved that dream within 2 days, once in a lifetime type of experience. And when you do something for the first time, obviously that big, it's just like you're flying to the moon. I mean, it's a kind of an out of body experience. So of course it was a kind of a surreal experience for me, and I tried to enjoy it and embrace it. But at the same time, I felt like, okay, it's great to share the court with these guys, but I want to beat them. I want to get the biggest titles. I want to be number 1. I want to dominate. So I think that the first kind of that wave that I was riding on helped me to win my first slam when I was 19. And then I won a couple of big tournaments and so forth. I reached number 2 in the world, but I still wasn't number 1. And then I had a 3-year period. I didn't win a slam. I was winning some big tournaments, but I couldn't win a slam. These 2 guys were beating me in every big match, Federer and Nadal. I changed rackets, team members. I did everything I can to kind of find the right formula. And I was struggling physically as well. I wasn't, that's where I had my transformative journey nutrition-wise, where I took out everything, started going in the upwards direction. Learning also from these guys and the matches that we've played against each other was something that was extremely important for me at that time. I was, of course, trying to consume as much as I can this energy of the center court and everything, and it was overwhelming at times. But I was also very thorough in my analysis of the matches afterwards, even though I don't necessarily like to watch matches that I lost. Kobe Bryant used to talk about this a lot, and when I was talking to him, and he said, even if it's just specific intervals of the match that you lost, that you want to watch, that you definitely look at that and you need to analyze that and you need to go through that cramping feeling, because that's where you learn from those mistakes, and that's where you have an opportunity to rectify that in the next tournament or next match and so forth. So that helped a lot. I have identified that as well, is my feeling of not being enough. And that goes back to my very, very beginning of my life and my relationship, particularly with my father, and not doing enough, not being good enough, etc., etc. So, and it's kind of the battle that I also go through often. Because a lot of people, even closest people in my life, ask me, what more do you want? You have achieved everything. Why do you keep going? And I tell them that I still really strongly feel it's inside of me. And I feel like as long as I have the capacity or ability to compete for the biggest titles in my sport, I want to keep going. And also that inspires me to keep going is to test my limits mentally and physically. Because when I was starting to break through into professional tennis, I remember when you reach your 30, you start counting your days to your retirement. Like after 30, that's it pretty much. It's also a kind of a curiosity from my side. How far can I go? I'm 38 this year. How long can I push my own limits? And I don't feel like I do have limits. And I feel like the limits are normally constructs in our mind. The care for your body and your mind and the devotion to the daily habits is so tough. That's where it started. And I was like, I was really trying to adapt all of the great things that I could see. And I have a kind of a photogenic memory, and I'm a very visual person. It taught me to really understand that tennis is not only about hitting a tennis ball over the net and counting score and dreaming about these achievements and winning Wimbledon as our holy grail of tennis, but it's more than that. And I can use tennis as a platform to evolve into a better human being. At that point, I didn't understand that. But then as I was growing older and becoming more mature, I started to understand the importance of doing all of these practices. And I started to expand on each of these topics that I was going through with her. Tennis really consumed most of my life. But I'm still surprising and shocking myself on how much I actually need to still work on that. And I still, quote unquote, don't know enough about that world. And it was really hard for me to accept that. I thought, since 10, I basically started working on that and growing the foundation. But it has evolved and has transformed so much for me in terms of how I see myself, how I see the world. And I thought, maybe when I was at the peak of my career and, I felt like I'm unbeatable and I feel like I could do anything. We all experience that in our own lives in a certain way, and it's a great feeling. But then the ego takes you places where it's hard to come back from. And maybe you shouldn't come back from that. Maybe you're trying to find a balance, find the optimal measure that really works for you. But it took me time to really accept the fact that what I have learned, what I have mastered, and what I'm doing on a daily basis is not necessarily a guarantee that I'll always find a way and that will always work for me in this particular time of my life and circumstances that I'm facing. So that's a huge revelation for me and I'm still trying to get a grasp on it and understand all of these factors that are in play that are challenging me on a daily basis. And when I talk from this perspective, it's a beautiful journey that I'm trying to embrace. But when you are immersed in the dark moment, it's kind of hard to really get out of that. It's okay to be bored sometimes. First of all, you had a great active morning and you did a lot of things. And Second of all, when you're bored, it doesn't mean that you have to instantly take a book or a screen or anything else. You need to also learn how to be with your thoughts. And if you're not comfortable being bored indoors, go outdoors. Sit on a chair and have some drink and just look at the sky. And I really would love my children to be able to be okay with being bored, because that's the time when you're actually most creative, or that's the time when you can manage your thoughts and everything that you have been suppressing by distracting yourself with phone, with whatever it is. It's a struggle, but it's important. I think it's super important, particularly for them at this young age, to understand and develop a connection with nature, with outdoors, with activity, with all these things. I don't think that necessarily distractions are 100% super negative. And I'll explain. I think that for a lot of people, they need a moment. It looks like they're distracting themselves, like when I do it. But what I do is just bringing myself back to that center, whatever that is. So I don't feel it's necessarily bad unless you don't have any control of it, unless it just carries you into hours and hours of playing games or being on social media, if it's that, then it's not good.